So this is part 2 of me attempting to talk about the American Colonization Society and the formation of the landmass that we now know as Liberia. So during this time also, there was a small governing party. It was called the True Whig Party, and they were kind of like a cliquey and elite group that kind of controlled everything. And the descendants of the settlement from the American Colonization Society, I'm going to refer to them as Americo-Liberian for the remainder of this video, had like a immense control over the land. They controlled the trade routes, they controlled like any local resources, any policy, and they had an extreme dominance over the indigenous population. And as you can imagine, this is going to lead to conflict. So there was a series of wars fought in this time between the indigenous population and the Americo-Liberians. I am now citing information from Genesis Santana, who was a graduate from the University of Central Florida and wrote a dissertation on this and the many wars that took place during this time. Okay, and the first of these wars were in 1822, the Day Settler War. And this was a deadly war over control of the coast when the settlers initially came. So during this time, we saw like 4 more wars in conflict between indigenous ethnic groups and then descendants of the settler community or the Americo-Liberians. So we had the Day Settler War in 1822, the Day Gola Settler War in 1832, the Bastard Settler War in 1835, the Crew Settler Fisherman Conflict of 1838, and the Va Settler Battles of 1839 to 1840. So with all this, after all these conflicts, we witnessed like a rise of like an elite class. So now we have like a caste system. And again, this caste system is assuming all the key positions of government, any legislative, administrative role. And they were able to put in laws and policies in their interest, basically. So with any good caste system, you have to create a division between the haves and the have-not. And how they did it was having a civilized and an uncivilized class. So after monopolizing this key position, they needed some indigenous people to be allies, because you can't be fighting everyone around you if you are the minority group, which makes sense. So reading on excerpts and commentary from the treaty between the American Colonization Society and African Kings in May 11 of 1825, it says that the Americo-Liberians skillfully navigated complex relations with the indigenous populace by forming alliances with certain indigenous leaders while marginalizing others who posed a threat to their authority. This strategy allowed them to maintain control over the political landscape and suppress potential challenges to their rule. Furthermore, the Americo-Liberians implemented policies and practices that reinforced social and cultural division between themselves and the indigenous communities. This included promoting Western ideals of civilization and education amongst the settler population while denying similar opportunities to the indigenous people, thereby perpetuating a hierarchy social structure based on notions of superiority and inferiority. Okay? So now, if you ever look up photographs from like this time period in Liberia, you would see like very distinguished how people have the top hats, those Congo suits, and then there would be like a contrast of an indigenous person in like, I would say, native wares. So that's the contrast of like the civilized and uncivilized. And even in our vocabulary right now, we use words like hui, or this person will be too civilized, or this person uncivilized, or even say the interior, the village, as a contrast to being civilized. It's so like that remnants in that vocabulary from colonialization is so very much ingrained in our vocabulary.